I'm so dead curious, Blaine said as we made our way to an abandoned mansion, known locally as the Crying Mansion. How does the mansion constantly emit the sounds of crying during the night? Every single night. I was there with Sylvie when we did the survey, Blaine continued. It was 10 p.m. We were standing in front of the mansion's gate, and even from there, we could hear clear, loud crying sounds coming from inside. Are you sure the mansion is abandoned? Timothy asked. 100%, Sylvie replied calmly, certainty evident in her voice. We asked around the neighborhood, Sylvie added. The owner was an eccentric man who lived in the 18th century. He had no family, and, according to the neighbors, he was never seen leaving the house. How are they so sure? I mean, the guy lived in the 18th century. It's 2025 now, I said. It's become a sort of local urban legend, passed down from generation to generation. Blaine explained. Their grandparents told them about it. In fact, Blaine added, sounding as excited as ever, one of them even said, and I quote, "We don't care if you or anyone else is willing to break in and loot the mansion. Do it if you dare. Just don't blame us if anything happens to you." He even said, Sylvie added, her calm demeanor unshaken. One more thing, Blaine continued, it was also said that the only time the owner was seen outside his house was when a delivery car came by to drop off a pack of frames. Frames used for paintings and photographic images. Interesting, I replied. Timothy, Blaine, Sylvie, Alex, and I are content creators who explore abandoned and haunted locations around the globe. We parked our van beside the mansion's tall stone wall. The place was almost fortress-like with towering gates. No other houses were in sight. The nearest one was about a mile away. Krista, do you hear it? Timothy asked me. I do. Yeah. Loud and clear, I replied. We weren't even inside the gate, and the sounds of crying were already horrifyingly loud and agonizing. It was almost as if hundreds of people were trapped inside, crying for a way out. Hundreds. Using his tools, Tim broke the gate seal, a seal no neighbor had ever dared to touch. The closer we got to the mansion's porch, the louder and more agonizing the crying became. This place has the most horrifying ambience of all 125 places we've visited combined. I murmured. Agreed, Sylvie said softly. When Tim was about to break the front door's lock, the door suddenly clicked open on its own. This doesn't look good, I muttered under my breath. We stepped into the mansion's living room. It was pitch black. We couldn't see a thing. The crying, louder now, was more agonizing than anything we'd ever heard in our 125 haunted explorations. We each strapped on headbands with cameras attached, ready to record everything. You guys ready? Tim asked. Have we ever not been? Alex replied. Almost in unison, we turned on our flashlights and scanned the room. As we tried to make sense of our surroundings, the mansion's lights flickered on. It went from complete darkness to blinding brightness in seconds. Did anyone accidentally turn on the light? I asked cautiously. No one answered. It was the ghost, apparently, Alex joked uneasily. We'd explored countless haunted locations before, so a supernatural event like this wasn't entirely new. What was new, however, was what we saw next. The room was filled with framed paintings, oil portraits of people of all ages, genders, and styles, each framed in ornate gold. The walls of the massive living room were completely covered with these paintings. All four walls. You can barely see the actual wall, I muttered. It's almost entirely covered in framed paintings. I get that the owner was an eccentric collector, but this is absurd, Blaine said. Who on earth covers every inch of their walls with framed paintings? Not just the walls, Sylvie added, pointing upward. Look at the ceiling. All of us turned our flashlights toward the ceiling. Just like the walls, it was covered in countless framed paintings. Who on earth pins paintings to the ceiling? Tim muttered. The sheer number of paintings was overwhelming. But as I looked closer, I began to notice something strange about the crying sounds. I approached one of the paintings on the wall and studied it. Then another. I moved around the room, inspecting the paintings one by one. The crying sounds seemed to be coming from inside the paintings. Krista, what is it? Alex asked. Don't you hear it? I replied. The crying. I said, it's coming from within the paintings. We all began examining the paintings more closely. "Holy shit," Blaine whispered. "You're right." "What are these?" Sylvie murmured, her voice trembling. "Shall we proceed?" Tim asked. No one answered, but we all followed him deeper into the mansion. We continued our exploration deeper inside the mansion, moving from one room to the next. Room after room, it was the same, walls and ceilings covered with framed paintings, each one emitting cries of agony. Judging by the clothing, Sylvie noted, these people seemed to be from different eras. She was right. Some looked like they were from the 18th century, while others appeared more modern, some even wearing clothes from the 2020s. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "The owner lived in the 18th century. He should have died long ago. How does he have paintings of people from modern times?" "Guys," Alex called to us. We turned our heads to face him. "Is it just me? Or does that look like a headband with a camera to you?" We took a closer look at the painting Alex was referring to. It was a man wearing a modern hiking jacket and a headband with a small camera attached to it. "Just like ours," Sylvie muttered. "There's no way this one came from the 18th. Or even the 19th, Blaine responded. "We abort this mission and get out." "Now, who disagrees with me?" Timothy said. No one answered. Each and every one of us agreed with him. "Good," Tim said as he led the way and we followed behind. We had walked through more than half of the first floor. The mansion was insanely huge. One of the biggest abandoned mansions I had ever seen in my life, both online and offline. It wouldn't be a short trip out. On our way back, I noticed something I hadn't before. All the walls and ceilings were almost fully covered by framed paintings. Most of them depicted people, but some were just blank, empty canvases. In fact, we had just walked past one that was hanging not too high above the floor, right at about our eye level. "Krista, Tim," I suddenly heard Sylvie's loud, terrified scream from behind me. We turned around. The horrifying terror consumed us all as we saw two hands reaching out of one of the framed blank canvases, grabbing Sylvie and trying to pull her in. "Sylvie!" All four of us ran toward her, grabbing everything we could, her arms, her waist, and tried our best to pull her back. We fought against ghostly hands that were trying to drag her into the canvas. The ghostly hands were far stronger than all four of us combined. We lost Sylvie. She was pulled into the canvas, her body transforming into a painted image within the frame, just like all the others in that mansion. "Run for your lives," Tim shouted as he bolted as fast as he could toward the mansion's front door, with the three of us following close behind. We didn't think about anything except running as fast as we could to the front door, desperately trying to save our own lives. "Tim," I heard Alex scream behind me. I turned my head slightly, only to witness him being pulled into one of the framed canvases by ghostly hands, just as Sylvie had been. "Run," Tim shouted again. "We can't save anyone if we end up pulled into the canvas too. We'll figure this out later." It was a painfully logical and wise statement. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me. Only moments later, I heard Blaine's screams echo behind me. I didn't turn around this time. I already knew what was happening. He was being pulled in too. Like Tim said, we couldn't save anyone if we got pulled into the canvases ourselves. Being the fastest runner of us all, I managed to overtake Tim, who had originally been ahead of me. The front door was just a few meters away. Tim and I could make it. Just as the thought crossed my mind, I saw a pair of ghostly hands emerge from a nearby canvas and grab my arm. "Shit," I shouted, horrified. Thank goodness I had managed to pass Tim earlier because, at that moment, as the ghostly hands tightened their grip on my arm, Tim, running right behind me, grabbed my other arm and pulled with all his strength as he kept moving forward. Perhaps it was because the ghostly hands had only just latched onto me, but with Tim's help, I managed to break free. We ran, hand in hand, until we burst through the mansion's front door and collapsed on its porch, gasping for air, staring back into the darkness inside. The sounds of crying grew louder, and among those cries, I could unmistakably hear the voices of Sylvie, Alex, and Blaine. Tim and I spent weeks investigating the mansion, desperately hoping to find a way to save Sylvie, Alex, and Blaine without sacrificing ourselves, of course. Weeks of searching yielded zero results. Our last hope lay in the footage we had captured on Tim's camera and mine. We decided to edit it and upload it to every social media platform we had, praying someone out there could help. The video went viral. 237 million views in just 2 weeks. Insane. As we'd hoped, someone reached out to us by leaving a comment under the video. It explained everything about the mansion. I was there, with my exploring crew. Just like you, I'm the only survivor out of my crew of 8. It took me 2 years of investigation to get the answer to the same question you have. The owner isn't just some eccentric art collector. He's a black magic practitioner who's mastered eternal life. Wait, I interrupted Tim. He is? Did he mean he was? Let's just keep reading, Tim replied. The comment continued. In order for the mansion's owner to live eternally, the black magic he practices requires him to continuously absorb living humans' life essence. The method he chose is trapping people inside framed canvases. Each canvas has a spell cast on it, extracting the victim's life force and transferring it to the mansion's owner. The mansion's owner is still alive, somewhere inside. He can't leave. He can't stray far from the paintings. They're the source of his life. Once someone is captured and trapped within a canvas, it's over. They're gone. I lost all 7 of my crew in that mansion. There's nothing I could do to save them. My advice, forget it. Let it go. Move on and live your life the best you can. And if possible, stop exploring. That's the least your lost crew would want for you. There was nothing we could do. We lost Sylvie, Alex, and Blaine. Tim and I couldn't lose each other over the same thing.